So welcome to the next in our online messages brought to you by the friends at First Church Rowley. This is Reverend Tom Bentley, the pastor, hoping that these messages can help you in your journey of life. Maybe you have some questions. Maybe you even have some questions for God. What would those be? I hope this inquiry can help you out. If you want to know more about the First Church in Rowley, then you can wait for the end of the video and there's some information there. So peace and best wishes. So grace and peace to you from our friend Jesus. Recently I had the opportunity to listen to a video. It was a goodbye video by a colleague of mine who was saying goodbye after 21 years of serving a congregation. And she talked about how she became a member of the clergy, a minister. She'd been reared in a house where her dad was a deacon, and she loved the church, and she felt confident and capable within its works, and she understood her relationship with Jesus. And when she got to UNH, she was majoring in literature, and in the first year there was a group discussion, and the professor asked everybody, how many people here believe in God? And she put her hand right up. Nobody else did. And she went, oh. And there was a follow-up conversation where the professor asked people, if you had something happen differently in your life, might have you responded to this question about God differently? And what might have been the thing that changed the course of your life to maybe be in a different focus than you are now? And a number of people said, if I'd connected to somebody when I was really trying to figure out my life, and I had some big questions, and if they were able to help me with those questions, I might even have been part of a faith community. But I didn't find anybody like that. And my colleague friend said, oh, and she realized at that moment that she had a calling to be somebody who could be with others and help them deal with these big questions. We have a lot of questions as human beings, and our minds are designed to do certain kinds of critical thinking well, logic particularly. We can isolate all the information down to a series of core sequential events, an either-or point of view. We forget that our binary system of computer programming is really a yes or no, or one or a two. I mean, that binary world of dividing things apart, of breaking down unity and busting it into sequential, ordered, thoughtful ideas that make sense, and we have empirical evidence that we can see to back up where we're at. That logic is how we get at answers to our questions. And it's all too often when we're doing this logical reasoning, we approach the divine. I like to use that word rather than God per se because it's such a loaded word. But we approach the divine with kind of a gotcha mentality. I can prove that this is ridiculous, or this seems intellectually a travesty that you would think this and do that, and look at this old book, the Bible, and so it all goes out the window. And there's nobody there to wrestle with these questions. Jesus came into his community, and there were a lot of legalistic people who were arguing from a legal base. Law was in the Torah, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. That's where you would get your body of core documents and teachings, and from that you would deduce legal reasoning and guidance. So there's a moment in the Gospel of Luke. Sadducees are arguing with Jesus about the legal sequence of, in Judaism at the time, if a man died, his wife married the brother because they were concerned about the woman being childless. If she was childless, she'd marry the brother and try to have a child. And then they had this absurd idea that this woman had lived through 7 husbands and never had a child. And when the woman gets to the other world, heaven or whatever, whose wife is she of all these 7 men that she had married? They asked that wife now in the resurrection, whose wife is she? All seven married her. And Jesus said, marriage is a major preoccupation here, but not there. Those who are included in the resurrection of the dead will no longer be concerned with marriage, nor, of course, with death. They will have better things to think about, if you can believe it. All ecstasies and intimacies then will be with God. Even Moses exclaimed about resurrection at the burning bush, saying, God, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob. God isn't the God of dead men, but of the living. To him all are alive. Jesus invites these logical thinkers into another realm of knowing. And when we're invited there, like my colleagues, fellow students, we don't go often. We say, I'm not going there. And in the process, we don't go much of anywhere. Because you see, life is a mystery. It's a story that reveals itself. And one thing we do understand, that we're lost, that we don't really have the answers to so much in life. How can we become found? How can we pursue the truth in a skeptical universe of doubt and disarray, often cruelty? Dylan Thomas wrote A Child's Christmas in Wales, and he remembers being a little boy getting all the presents, and he said, and they gave me a book that told me everything I needed to know about the wasp, except why? Why? That's a big question. Why are there wasps? Why are we alive? Questions to God are all about this why, which we can never control with our reasoning mind. That doesn't mean that logic and reason don't have a role to play in the inquiry. But in our desire to pursue the divine, if we have that, if we have a hope that we can grapple with our existence and wrestle with the logical argument these days that it's all a damn accident. Now that's an interesting conclusion, because there's a lot of empirical evidence that it's not, but people have closed their minds off because they can't grab this big thing here, and they think the word God is absurd, like some guy in the sky. That's not what it's about. We have to step away from our own logic as always being the rule of measure. But we don't abandon our reasoning power, but we need to understand that, well, that something's happening. Leslie Weatherhead was a great preacher, and he talked about all the bad stuff that's happening in life. He said we're like little children making, at the beach, a little dam, and the water runs down right, and they make the dam and the water breaks through. And he says, all the things that we do to obstruct this flow, ultimately the water finds the ocean. Ultimately the truth and justice arrive in the universe, and our lives go with it. Things resolve. Things happen that we don't expect all the time. I'm not talking about hocus pocus magic. I'm talking about the understanding that when we do encounter with all of our powers of knowing, not just our logic, when we do encounter something that moves us and transforms us, we can't say exactly what happened, but we know something did. I love the story of Horton Hatches the Egg. It's that Dr. Seuss book. I meant what I said what I meant. An elephant's faithful 100%, says Horton, the big elephant, who in his faithfulness finds a little egg abandoned, decides to sit on it and hatch it. So Horton is taken into a zoo eventually. He's sitting on this tree with this egg, and they think he's completely bizarre. He's rebuked. He's the odd show. And then the egg starts to move after a long period of time. The poor elephant went through storms and ship transport. Poor elephant. But he stayed on his egg because he was faithful 100%. And the egg starts to move, and that's the end of the little story. And Horton gets off the egg, and just then the bird that abandoned the egg, named Maisie, sees what's happening, flies in and says, hey, that's mine. I want that egg. I want that little baby bird. She hadn't done anything to raise the thing, but there it goes like this, pops open it, and it's an elephant bird. And people say, "Yeah, it should be like that. It should be like that." Yes, it should be. In a transformative moment, reality, breaks open, and there we have a miracle of truth and connection. Is the story Horton hatches the egg a literally factual story? Of course not. But what meaning does it give us is that we are invited to live out of the assurance that love will be victorious, that we can, along with Horton the elephant, be faithful 100%. And that's the transformative power. We don't know where this is going. We can't even answer why we're here. But God's love is real every moment. Who doesn't believe in love? And who has been ever able to prove that it's really there? That's the mystery of life. That's the mystery of the gospel. Can we go looking for it with an open heart and mind and ask those big questions? But when we don't get the answers we think we should get, don't give up the journey. Don't give up the search. Continue on. Like Jesus says, God isn't the God of dead people, but of the living. To him all are alive forever. Amen. So thank you for spending time with us. If you'd like to know more about the First Congregational Church of Rowley, you can go online at firstchurchrowley.org. And of course, we'd always love to hear from you. You can call us anytime at 978-948-3993. So blessings in your journey. Goodbye.